definitely a bad bearing. Hi everyone, and welcome to Drive, your source for automotive reviews, analysis, maintenance, and restorations. Please subscribe to our channel, watch the entire video, watch our other videos, and of course click on notifications to be first to learn about new videos. I'm Chris Capredoni, and in this how-to video, I will explain and demonstrate how to replace a front hub assembly on a BMW X5. Unlike the rear wheel bearing, which is separated from the hub, the front is a self-contained unit that just bolts straight on, not requiring any pulling or pressing. Also, no expensive tools are required, but you will need to invest in a Torx M12 bit, which is the 12-point version of a Torx T55 bit, to remove the 4 bolts holding the assembly to the suspension. If you hear grinding, squealing, or vibration at one of the front wheels, it most likely is the wheel bearing deteriorating or continuing to deteriorate, which will eventually create a very dangerous situation as it will seize and you will lose handling control and most likely steering as well. Let's get over to the vehicle and get started. Hi everyone, so today I need to replace the front bearing assembly on my BMW E70. This is different than the rear ones that I did because the rear ones require you to separate the old bearing assembly and press it back onto the hub, whereas the fronts are a self-contained unit. So I don't need to contend with that. Also, different bolts that are required to fasten it. I'll get to that later. And the first thing I need to do is I got the wheel off and secured it on jack stands, is I need to remove the full caliper and hang it up with zip ties out of the way, remove the rotor. I have to remove this retaining bolt with, I think it's a 6mm Allen. And to remove the caliper, I need to use an E19 Torx bit. So I'll get to that, get this out of the way, get this off. Then the next step will be to remove the spindle bolt or spindle nut so that I can knock the axle out of the way so that I can start working to get the old assembly out of its knuckle, out of the knuckle. I removed the 2 caliper mounting bolts and suspended the full caliper assembly out of the way using zip ties. That's a good location because I don't need that area there. Also, remove the rotor. Now I'm exposing the old hub assembly. You can see there are 4 bolt head or tips sticking out. Those are the bolts that I need to remove. So in order to not, based on experience, not to drag dirt or grime or rust into the thread, I'm going to wire brush them and lubricate them so that, first of all, it's easier to extract them, and also I'm not going to be dragging any sort of foreign objects in there, potentially ruining the thread. I feel that that's probably best. And also I need to remove this spindle nut, and I'm going to use, this is a 36mm 12-point socket. I'm going to start with my air gun, but I'll probably finish off using a breaker bar. Since I already have it suspended off the ground, I need to use the gun. I may also remove the dust shield. There are 4 10mm bolts, just so that I have more access, because I'm seeing that I need to remove the speed sensor because it goes inside. I don't want to damage that. Those are expensive to replace, well, relatively expensive. So the next step for me now is to clean up the ends of these bolts, lubricate them, let the penetrating oil seep in order to start prepping for extraction. now let that sit. Next step is to remove the spindle axle nut. I have my air gun all ready to go, so I'll get started. Remember to wear proper ear protection. These are loud. Okay, the next step is to push back the axle towards the center of the vehicle so that it's not attached to the splines on the old bearing assembly, hub assembly. So I'm going to do that with a hole punch in the center and a sledgehammer. Okay, I was able to push it in. It's not going in anymore, so I'm going to leave it for now. Upon inspection, I noticed that the ABS sensor could potentially get damaged and be in the way. So there's a 5mm Allen bolt holding it in place. And then right over here, there's a bracket which will be in the way of removing one of the retaining bolts for the assembly. Again, those are 5mm Allen as well. So I'm going to remove them all and push them to the side so that I can prepare to start removing the 4 retaining bolts on the old assembly. It took a while, but I got the front bearing assembly out. Here it is. And the problem I had was 2 of the bolts holding it in place needed to be drilled out. Warning to everybody, these particular bolts, even with the M12 socket, they strip extremely easily because they're a softer metal. So I had no choice but to drill them out from the front going inward until I could pop them out. Now, what I need to do is I need to clean up, probably using some Scotch-Brite, some wire brush or something like that. I want to clean up the whole area, especially the mating area, before I get ready to put in the new assembly. I want to grease those splines to make sure they don't seize and to stay lubricated. I want to clean out the spindle nut threads as well. I want to make sure everything's nice and clean and ready. Everything's been cleaned up. I used a wire brush as well as some Scotch-Brite, especially in the mating areas. I wanted to make sure I got rid of all the corrosion from the aluminum and dirt and deposits so that I have a nice, tight, proper fit. Also on the splines, you'll notice I have silver anti-seize on it, just to give it an added level of protection and also lubrication in order to push the new sub-assembly on. The spindle threads are in good shape. They've been cleaned out. They're ready to go. So the next step now is for me to grab the new hub assembly and start installing it with the 4 bolts hand tight from the back. New hub assembly has been installed, and I put the bolts in hand tight so that if I needed to wiggle it around a little bit, I had that flexibility. Now what I need to do is I need to torque those 4 bolts down. And these are the M12 1.25 bolts, and they need to be torqued down to 80 pound-feet of torque. The other one that's an option is the 1.5, and I think those need to be torqued down to 120 pound-feet, but I'll check and confirm. So the next step for me is to get my torque wrench, set it to 80 pound-feet, and get back there and torque them down. So I've torqued down the 4 M12 bolts to 80 pound-feet plus 90 degrees, or as close to 90 degrees as possible. Remember, these are a soft material bolt, and I did not want to strip the head as I'm installing them, but I think I'm pretty much there. I also installed the ABS wheel speed sensor with the clip. Where is it? Right there, with the 5mm Allen, and those are torqued to 8 Newton meter. not very much, just really hand tight. I started putting on the spindle nut, but the axle is spinning. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm actually going to have to install the tire, lower it down so that I have friction so that I can tighten down this spindle nut, which goes to 310 pound-feet, which is a lot of torque. I don't have a torque wrench that goes up to that spec, but pretty much what it is as hard and as tight as you possibly can get it until it won't go anymore. Also, I made a visual marker of how much the spindle will stick out from the nut, and that's exactly 2 millimeters. So even visually, I know when I need to stop. So I'm going to get the tire and start working on torquing this down. Now that sounds right. Thanks everyone for watching this informative DIY tutorial on how to replace front wheel hub and bearings on a BMW X5. This procedure is a bit more complicated than most DIY replacements, but with little time and effort you will be able to install them and forget about them for approximately 5 to 10 years. Please ensure you wear proper eye and ear protection and properly lift and secure the vehicle with jack stands and wheel chocks. Ensure that you reinstall the wheel lug bolts to the proper torque. Replace any damaged bolts as necessary. This X5 requires a torque spec of 105 pound-feet. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and select the notification option. Drive, your source for automotive reviews, analysis, maintenance, and restorations.